Good morning. This is Ramblin' Rusty. Today I'm going to take you on a short tour of the Battle of Newmarket, what happened in Newmarket and right around it. So come and enjoy this short video. Good morning. This is Ramblin' Rusty. Today I'm rambling around Newmarket, Virginia right now. This is a picture of the Rice farmhouse. This house was located here in Newmarket, and it is a beautiful structure. There's a sign here that says you're standing on what was the Rice farm during the Civil War. The large brick house in front of you is a Rice house. The Greek Revival structure was built in 1834 by Dr. John W. Rice. Rice was a prominent Shenandoah Valley landholder and president of the Valley Turnpike Company, which formed to build a mechanized Valley Turnpike from Winchester to Harrisonburg. It is believed that this property was originally settled by the Nicholas Sidon in the late 1700s. The property was adjacent to what was a great wagon road. Later, the route of the Valley Turnpike, 200 feet behind you. He likely chose the location because a large spring about 250 to your right. Samuel and Mary acquired the property in the first quarter of the 19th century, constructed the White House. You can see to the right in the back of the main building. We'll go around there and take a look at it in just a minute. The Rice family later used that building as headquarters for the enslaved persons. The Rice farm was visited by both Union and Confederate commanders during the Civil War, including General Nathan Banks, who used the house as headquarters. And Confederate General Stonewall Jackson was camped on the farm. During the Battle of Newmarket, it was used as headquarters, first by the Union Colonel Augustus Moore and later by the Union General Franz Sigel. Fighting also took place across the farm. The south wall of the house still bears shell that lodged there during the battle. The property left the ownership of the Rice family in 1882. The house was used for a variety of purposes, including an orphanage and a truck stop. The site was purchased and preserved by the Shenandoah Valley Battlefields National Historic District. Now, if you really want to listen to what they say about this, go to 540-452-9004. And this is stop number 15. He mentioned about the house around the side. We'll walk around the building right now and take a look at that. And this was a very sturdy structure. It's brick construction. And this was next to the house, the Rice house. So I will be doing more stops here in Newmarket just to let you know what is happening here in Shenandoah Valley. There's my trusty van, and there's the Valley Turnpike. Right now, I am at the original burial site of 6 Virginia Military Institute cadets who died as a result of the May 15, 1864 Battle of Newmarket. These cadets were disinterred in the spring of 1866. 4 were taken later to the Virginia Military Institute for reburial, and 2 were taken locations requested by family members. Anyway, I'm here in a cemetery here where the battle waged up and down the valley. There's a sign here entitled the Church Cemetery. Across the road at the cemetery was St. Michael's Lutheran Church during the Civil War. On the morning of the Battle of Newmarket, 6 Union cannon commanded by Alonzo Snow were in the cemetery supporting the Union infantry position along the River Road. The River Road goes from there. It's no longer used. This is into the state maintenance, and it goes that way. I will talk more about it later. When the Confederate cannon on Shirley's Hill, 3/4 of a mile behind you, fired the first shots of the battle at 8 a.m., Snow's guns roared out in reply. The Confederates aimed counter battery fire at Snow's guns, sending shells crashing among the tombstones, with stray shots falling on the streets of town. The artillery exchange continued throughout the morning. When the Confederate infantry advanced over Shirley's Hill at 11 a.m., Snow's gun targeted the exposed Southerners. One shell exploded in the ranks of the slower marching VMI cadets, wounding 5. When the Confederates later pushed the Federals through the town, some of the fighting spilled through the cemetery. Lottie was watching from her window 200 yards behind you, later recalling seeing the hand-to-hand fighting down the old church yard. After the Battle of Newmarket, many of the Confederate dead were interred in this cemetery, including 4 VMI cadets who were buried 2 days after the battle. Ultimately, 6 cadets would be buried here. All would later reinterred elsewhere. The following cadets were carried in caissons along the Valley Turnpike, accompanied by the surviving cadets. The large grave of 4 were dug on the old cemetery, recalled local residents. 3 volleys were fired, then the grave was filled. Again, if you would like to hear about this, dial 540-452-9004, and this is stop number 12. Now, there used to be a house located right along here where she had seen all the fighting taking place. All right, I will now go along the River Road. Let me read what this sign says. Action on the River Road. Such fire was poured out from our muskets. To our right is the original road trace of the historic River Road. The road began at the Valley Turnpike, modern day US 11, and ran for over a mile past to where you're standing over the brow of Moores Hill and to the North Fork of the Shenandoah River. On the morning of the battle, much of the Union Army, including General Franz Sigel, had not reached Newmarket. The outnumbered Federal troops who had arrived were commanded by Augustus Moore and had established their battle line along this road. With the 123rd Ohio in front of you and the West Virginia behind you, 6 cannons of Snow's Maryland battery in the graveyard to your rear. It was a strong position, but Moore was short of troops to defend it. Union reinforcements still far off strung along the Valley Pike. The Confederates outflanked both ends of the position, signaling disaster for the Federals. When General Sigel finally arrived in Newmarket about noon, the Confederates were already advancing. Realizing the rest of his force would not arrive before the Southerners' attack, Sigel ordered the troops positioned here to fall back to Bushong's Hill, a stronger, narrower position just over a mile to your right. Sometime between 1 p.m. and 2 p.m., the Federals had completely evacuated the town. The advancing Confederates paused briefly along this road, with the 62nd Virginia gathering in the area that would be brief. Soon the Southerners, including the 62nd Virginia, launched their next assault, targeting Federals on Rice Farm, 500 yards to your right. This is stop number 11. Remember, dial 540-452-9004, and this is stop number 11. I am at Historic River Road. This is, if you want to find information about that, dial 540-452-9004. And this is the Historic River Road. What you're looking at right now is a view of the river road. This was a road that was used very much during the Civil War. It went from which is now 11, and it went straight across toward the Shenandoah River. But Route 81 cuts it off now. And here is another view of the cemetery. There is a lot of the old tombstones are there. It's fun to go walking through them and just to see when people were born, when they died. And there's a lot of neat stories on these tombstones. So if you ever are here in Newmarket, take time to go through this cemetery. It's interesting. It's a quiet place. Not many people will bother you there. So anyway, next we'll go around to the front of the St. Michael's Church and see what happened during the Civil War there. Right now I'm standing in front of the Reformation Lutheran Church here in Newmarket. There's an interesting thing here because here we see a post here with a shell in it. This shell landed here during the Civil War, and it was just gives a little idea about the battles that was going on. This is stop number 13. If you want to hear what they say, dial 540-452-9004. And this is stop number 13. You're standing where the left end of the Union line was positioned at the beginning of the Battle of Newmarket. The line which included the 1st West Virginia, 123rd Ohio, and 18th Connecticut Infantry Regiments, stretched from here to Manners Hill. Early that morning, the 34th Massachusetts Infantry Regiment was also positioned here. During the Battle of Newmarket, Confederate General Breckinridge made innovative use of his artillery, employing his guns as a powerful mobile striking force. Breckinridge first had his cannon on Shirley's Hill, shelled at the Federals in fruitless attempt to provoke the Northerners into attacking. When he took the offensive, Breckinridge split his cannon into 3 groups. Jackson's battery stayed with General Wharton on the west side of the battlefield. McCatherin's battery went with General Ichabod on a sweeping movement around Smith's Creek The main artillery force, 10 guns commanded by the general, moved into the Valley Turnpike. Breckinridge accompanied the group on the pike, riding to Captain George Chapman's battery, told him to move his guns to the front where they could kill somebody. Chapman brought his guns rumbling through the streets of town at a sweeping gallop, unlimbered them here on the ground in front of you, where they were joined by the 2 guns manned by the VMI Cadets section. From here, the Southern cannon unleashed lethal fire into the Union infantry on Rice's Hill, helping to rout that force that engaged a duel with the Federals' guns under Kaiser in front of the Rice House, just 500 yards in front of you. The Confederate cannon overwhelmed the Federal guns, knocking a wheel off one piece and forcing them to withdraw. Breckinridge continued to move his guns forward, using them, in the words of Colonel Johnson, an almost skirmish line of infantry. Their fire wreaked havoc on the Federal guns, savaged the Union infantry, and played a key role in repulsing a Union cavalry charge at a turning point in the battle. In the words of historian William Jack Davis, there is not another battle of this size in the war in which maneuvering and firing of cannon played an important part in the outcome. So here are several of the cannons you can see that they have set up here. And of course these were moved when need be done. And of course the grounds we are on right now, there used to be a house here, which was a house for the pastor, which was torn down so that the battlefield could show exactly where the fighting took place. We're at stop number 6. It says you're standing at a historic crossroads in the center of downtown Newmarket. During the Civil War, was transportation. Thousands of Union Confederate troops marched through this intersection over the 4 years of war. John Seaver was born nearby in 1745, founded the town here where he established a tavern and store at this junction. The settlement was really called Crossroads, named after the intersection. The settlers built a racetrack, and when the town was incorporated, it was renamed Newmarket, later called New Market, after the famous horse racing town in England. And the community was largely settled by Germans and Scots from Pennsylvania, who migrated south when the Great Wagon Road, the town of the Battle of Newmarket. About 700 to 800 people lived here. Beginning in 1834, the Valley Turnpike Company formed a Newmarket resident, Dr. John Rice, built a new macadamized road consisting of crushed compact stone. The Valley Turnpike on the old Wagon Road route. The Valley Pike, modern day US 11, intersected the Newmarket Sperryville Turnpike, which ran east over the Newmarket Gap, only easily crisscrossed over the Massanutten Ridge line, making that gap and the crossroads important during the Civil War. 2 days before the Battle of Newmarket, a Union cavalry force was destroyed after it came through the gap. Parts of Confederate force that routed them galloped through this intersection. Franz Sigel, who commanded the Union Army at the battlefield itself, it always appeared to me the importance to occupy Newmarket, not only because it affords good position, but because it places an important road on the east, on the hands which led to the Newmarket Gap. And there across the street, you see these During the Battle of Newmarket, the fighting engulfed the streets around you, bringing terror to the people who lived there. Fighting first spilled through the town of Newmarket May 13, 2 days before the main battle, when the Confederate cavalry under John Nicholbom tore through the intersection, tearing left as they raced to ambush a Union cavalry forces descending the gap in the mountains. Later the next day, advanced elements of the Union and Confederate armies skirmished in and around the town, firing rifle fire crackling in the streets. The evening thunderous cannon commenced. My poor old mother and the little children are taken to the cellar for protection. That night as gunfire rang out in darkness, Jesse Rupert recalled, we slept in our garments on ready for flight, and driven in terror from our place between the contending armies. Some residents loaded their possessions onto wagons and rumbled out of town. Others buried their valuables, took a number of pigs and fowls into the house, while some farmers drove their cattle and Negroes into town. When the battle commenced the next morning, the residents were terrified by artillery fire crashing into the streets. Cannonballs and shells exploded every direction. Jesse Rupert recalled the air filled with dust and smoke and curses and shrieks. Jesse and her husband placed their children under their floorboards for protection. Perry Cook refugees in a cellar where everyone walked the floor and did not speak a word. During the lull in fighting, he ventured outside, but another cannon shell burst nearby. He scrambled back to safety. Coming to a fence, he later did not remember if I opened the gate or jumped it. As the fighting intensified, Confederate 62nd and 22nd and Virginia Infantry regiments marched down the street behind you as they pushed the Confederates through town. Shots, shouts, orders ringing out, bullets whizzing through the air, smashing into buildings. This is stop number 5, the Strayer House. The building on your left was built by Dr. Solomon Hinkle, one of the first physicians to reside in Newmarket. The small building in the rear was originally an apothecary. Anyway, German language publishing company founded in Newmarket, and it was later the Hinkle Press. In 1855, Solomon's son, P.C. Hinkle, added 2 rooms upstairs, a wooden front you see today. His wife, Anna Maria, and their children lived there during the Civil War. In mid-1862, a German soldier, General John C. Fremont's army, broke into the house. The Germans, who were notorious among friend and foe for being the most robbers and plunderers and thieves, ransacked and stole, but left the Hinkles unharmed. Union looters burst into the house again on the morning of battle in Newmarket. He stood aside, but successfully persuaded them to leave his surgical instruments, saying, "Before the day over, I may need them for some of you." Later that day, when Confederates swept through town, Confederate Colonel Breckinridge climbed into the roof of the house to observe the Union position. But Federal gunfire soon forced him to climb back down. After the battle, Dr. Hinkle indeed called to treat Union and Confederate wounded. Dr. Hinkle later said he assisted the Federal Hospital 3 months and tended to the woman, operated frequently, amputated several limbs, took up femoral artery in 2 cases, furnished medical and other comforts to the sick. This is stop number 3. Hinkle House is another historic home. The brick part was built by Solomon Hinkle, physician and druggist, in 1802. The wooden front part and the 2 rooms upstairs were added by his son. A metal plate nailed on the right beside the latch covers the holes broken into the panels by the rifle butts and bayonets of the Yankee soldiers who had been doused with hot water thrown from the upstairs window. The Hinkle Press sign is a remnant of the first German language press established west of the Blue Ridge. In 1806, Ambrose Hinkle, son of Reverend Paul Hinkle, began publishing Lutheran devotional materials, newspapers, songbooks, and children's books. Many residents of the area shared a German heritage, and the early Hinkle materials were printed in German, later in English. The Hinkle family believed that it was a way to preserve their culture, language, and religious beliefs. Reverend Paul Hinkle distributed many of the publications during his missionary travel. This stone and brick residence of Abbey Hinkle, located on north corner of Congress Street, Old Cross Roads, is thought to be the oldest home in Newmarket. The builder of this house is unknown and is said to be around 1835. Abe Neff and Samuel Funkhauser operated a general store from this side. And now John Henry is a general store here.